everyone, look up in the sky. What is that up there? Is it a bird, a plane, a meteor? No, it's DeepSeek. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's Alan Schimmel here at Techstrong, gang. You know, there are some days where I'm just so damn excited to be on here to talk about stuff because the world is exciting. Whether you like what's going on in the world or not like what's going on in the world, there's arguments to be made on both sides, but it's nevertheless exciting. I guess it proves that old Irish proverb written by Mike Vizard's great-grandpa, may you live in interesting times. Um, Speaking of Mike Vizard, let me introduce our fantastic Techstrong gang lineup for us today as we delve into some really important subjects. I mentioned him, so I might as well go there. He's not back in Ireland. He's actually up in upstate New York, as we call it, from Long Island. He's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
By that definition, the Bronx is upstate. So
Pretty much, yeah. Well, only the northern Bronx. Like Yankee Stadium was still the city, but once you got up like Bronxville, up that area, that was already upstate. Anyway, joining Mike and I, we have our Ohio contingent. They're both regular gang members, part of our Futurum Brotherhood and of Tech Field Day. She is the editor of Techstrong AI and Gestalt IT, Sulagna Saha. Hi, Sulagna, welcome, and thanks for being on with us today.
Hi, Alan. Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Great to have you. And then joining Sulagna, he's the founder of Tech Field Day and still its president, and running the show over there, our friend Stephen Foskett. Stephen, good to see you.
It's nice to be here. I'm not sure geographically, but we might have just gone north to south. Could be.
From Mike to you, to the Ohio
I guess,
folks.
I mean, because Sulagna's a little north of me.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I didn't have my Google Maps on and stuff. I just wing it. Anyway,
Pretty close.
and then certainly heading south. That I know for sure. Coming down here to the Boca Raton studios, we're joined by our everything green and sustainability analyst and editor, the one and only Bonnie Schneider. Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm well, Alan. Great to be here.
Great to be here. And of course, as I said, I'm Alan Schimmel, if you don't know. And we're here now. So, anything happening in the news today, guys?
There's this little startup thing called DeepSeek that everybody's flipping out about. Stock prices are dropping through the floor, and the issue is they created a AI model that is, I don't know, maybe a tenth the cost of what everybody else is producing it for. I'm just estimating off the top of my head, but folks are saying that they've created some new technique for training these AI models. They have not said what that is exactly, so everybody's scratching their head about how this thing works a little bit, but it's pretty clear that the cost of AI is coming down, and it's all open source, so people are testing it and using it like crazy. But Alan, I know you've been following this, so what's your thoughts here?
Absolutely. You know, there's circles within circles here, and you know, it's such an interesting story, not just from the technology perspective, but from the nation state strategic perspective, from the winning of the hearts and minds battle perspective here for AI, as well as the financial perspective. You know, I wrote what I think is a great article, if I say so myself. It's out on techstrong.ai, and it talks about necessity being the mother of invention. So, Mike, I've got to, I don't necessarily agree with you that the retraining techniques was so obscured as to not understand what they were doing. I think time will tell. I think, you know, there's so much to this. Let's try to build the case as if I was back in law school, and we'll start, you know, at that general foundational layer. What the folks, this company did, DeepSeek, Chinese-backed company, in a matter of a couple months and for a mere few million, $6 million or something, they claim to have built a AI that rivals ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Llama, and all the best that the Western AI companies have done at a cost of $1 trillion or so, or whatever it is. And they did it not with the latest, greatest, honkinest GPUs from Jensen and the NVIDIA folks, but with relatively much more modest hardware. They did it not with these elaborate training kind of machinations that take months and years, but in a matter of weeks using this retraining technique, as they call it. And then for the cherry on the top of the cake, they released it all, or if you believe, you're entitled to your opinion. They released it all under an open source license, and a real open source license, not some cockamamie fake open source license, but a real open source license, which will allow the world to verify this scientific method at its best. We could run this in labs. We could see what works, what doesn't work. Are they telling the truth? Are they not telling the truth? So that's at our base layer, right? Then the intrigue and the machinations come in. A country that just said we're putting $500 billion into buying or building AI data centers and energy production says, oh no, we can't let this happen. This will ruin the whole thing. And immediately you start seeing, well, the Chinese have done this before. This sounds like cold fusion. This is, a ploy. They're using forced labor. So the numbers aren't really true. Maybe. Why did the Chinese open source it? Obviously, to try to kneecap the Western AI industry. Very likely. But here's the bottom line. Who benefits from this? I'll tell you who benefits from it, the consumers. Because ultimately, in this war, for lack of a better word, and war doesn't necessarily mean guns, but in this battle of AI supremacy, as I think Satya Nadella at Microsoft said, we will all win because AI will become more ingrained into what we do. We will use it more. If it's easier to do, we all win for that. Now, there are some out there, though, who, looking at this under the guise of nation-state strategic initiatives and advantages, are just going to refuse to accept it. I think there's another argument to be made that perhaps if we didn't hold it so close to the vest and made it available to other countries, maybe this experimentation wouldn't go on, or maybe it's the inevitable necessity is the mother of invention, as I wrote in my article. By the way, that article's on Techstrong.ai. There's another good article there from John Swartz that was written prior, actually last Friday. You can check that out as well, and I'm sure we'll have more coverage, especially as the shockwaves of this reverberate around the globe. Anyway, I'll throw it open to the panel
So
here for your thoughts.
So the part that I like about this is the open source side of it, and that theoretically, at least, we should be able to replicate the results, and somebody else might use the same techniques to create additional models, and that would be awesome because other folks, in addition to all the things that you just said, are going to be a little bit wiggy about using an AI model directly from China because we're busily ripping out every telecom piece of equipment we can find from those guys. So I really hope that this is the way it works out, but I'd like to see the scientific proof and then I'll be happy. Steven, I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a few different aspects to this story that are interesting. I mean, and we've touched on most of them here already. Certainly, one of the questions is how did they do it? This thing exists. It's the most downloaded model in Hugging Face, apparently, and everybody's trying it out and experimenting with it, playing with it. So it's not like we can pretend that this didn't happen. It happened. How did they do it? We don't know. And I think that of all the controversies here, the how did they do it question may be the most salient controversy. In other words, it would be very appropriate, I suppose, in an international relations way for the Chinese government to want to stick a thumb in the eye of the US, just as the US is announcing big AI investments and tariffs and export controls and all this to say, look, we developed, we actually put this thing together with stone knives and paper, coat hangers, and it's just as good as anything you've got. I could completely see that from a political standpoint, and so we can't really truly know how they did it. I suspect that there's a lot of truth in what they're saying about how they did it, which is that they really relied on reinforcement learning. And furthermore, I suspect that the reinforcement learning leveraged a lot of the open source models and freely downloadable models that already exist out there. So if I was going to be training a new AI model, I would have it training in a classroom with Claude and Llama and all these, and let it let it do its thing with that as a way to train it. That may be how they did it, or it may be different. But setting aside how they did it and what they did it on, the next question is, did they do it on these export controlled H800s? Was it really just a small fraction of what one of these other companies would use? Again, we can't really know exactly for sure what they used to train it on, because of course there's a political implication of that too, in terms of access to technology and these export controls and so on. It is in their interests to say, hey, we put this together on 50 H800s, ha ha. Did they? I don't know. You don't know. But
I
again, we
think
can maybe set that aside and let's look at the merits of the model. The model is really good. This is what's happening right now in AI, is that we have these companies like Meta, like Anthropic, like, and, like this model that are out there. They're freely available. People can build on them. People can use them. That's why I feel like the basic models are not the strategic advantage people think they are. And again, that would leads me to question this whole Stargate investment, because if we can have basic models that are freely available and then we can retrain them or connect them with applications or build, a network of agents out of them or whatever, well, that benefits all of us, but it also kind of kickstarts this entire industry. And in a way that frankly doesn't benefit the people that are spending, billions of dollars to develop these basic models. Do we really need basic models? I don't know. Sulagna, there's a whole bunch of articles on Techstrong AI about this thing. What do you think?
So my thoughts are the same really. Whatever combination of techniques they use, they made it happen within 2 years with a small team of people and with just a handful of GPUs. I do not know what combination of techniques, like engineering techniques, they use per se, but definitely it's been told that the experts who are studying the Chinese innovation, they say that it's smart combination of open source methodologies and software driven resource optimization. And obviously they used, interestingly, a small batch of candidates, like who are these are PhD students, and they do not have any industry experience. They just not seasoned AI engineers, so none of that. So these are individuals who are fresh out of university, eager to prove themselves, and really dedicate to the mission. So yeah, and none of these techniques that were used were novel, so to speak, but they mixed and matched them so well that that was half the job done, and the rest of it were, well, um, history. Everybody saw how impactful this thing is.
You know, I'd like to turn from the technology aspect of this. And, I was a political science and history major. And the implications here are stunning. couple of things. First of all through the Cold War, and I'm old enough to remember, as some of us here on the panel are, and some of us aren't, but you know, we were the Red Menace. We were brought up around the Red Menace. The Russians had more rockets than we did. They got to space first. Their planes were faster. And you know, in the rearview mirror of history, we found out we probably overestimated exactly how good the Russian technology was, right? They didn't have they may have had more numerically, excuse me, but the quality and sophistication were probably not what we had. That being said, they certainly they made more with less, right? Excuse me, where they didn't necessarily adopt digital technology for this rocket program. They did a hell of a job with the analogs. And their fighter jets maybe weren't as fancy electronically and cutting edges, maybe especially as, you know, the 70s turned to the 80s. But they were still damn good. And, you know, so while it wasn't the Red Menace that we were brought up to be, there was still something to be said for making do with what you have, and necessity being the mother of invention. And that's the whole point of my article, is that given what they had to work with here, never underestimate the ingenuity of the human mind and human nature. Nature abhors a vacuum, and where there's a will, there's a way. They figure it out. And you know what? I will tell you the truth. Historically, that was one of the things about America, right? We used to, you know, going back to the railroad era and the cars and you know, all of those things in the, let's say, mid 1800s through the mid 1900s, we figured out new, better, cheaper ways of doing things. It's not always the guy who spends the most money wins. And that's part of the American story too, is it, you know, if you could come up with a better mousetrap, good for you. You deserve what you get. And is this a better mousetrap? You know what? I don't even pretend to know enough about the technology and what happened here to tell you it's definitely a better mousetrap. But I will tell you it is a mousetrap that seems to catch mice as well as some of the other mousetraps out there right now. And until it's shown otherwise, I think it's just a fascinating story about the human condition, whether you're Chinese or Indian or American or Brazilian, or I don't care where you're from, we're all humans, and our curiosity and our drive to figure out and solve problems that's what makes us human. And so kudos to them for what they've done, assuming that the whole thing's not full of beans, right?
Well, assuming that it doesn't matter what they did per se, one of the things that we have seen is the open source community keeps closing the gap between their models and the proprietary models, and they keep closing it faster. And so these AI companies, they have a problem that goes beyond just what the Chinese are doing. They're investing billions of dollars to build AI models and then turning around 6 months later and the open source community is right on their heels. So
because the tighter you hold sand in your hand, the more the grains slip between your fingers. Somewhere Dr. Richard Stallman is dancing a jig because that is the open source model.
I think it'd be great if some of the prices come down, if it creates more competition, because just one thing I've been watching is the prices keep going up as they add more features and you know, suck you into it. So I haven't tried it, the DeepSeek, but I'm curious to see the performance and of course the pricing.
Well, there are a couple other technical aspects to DeepSeek that I think are particularly interesting and worth calling out. I am doing AI field day tomorrow and the next day after all, and we've been studying this. A couple of things. Number one, to Bonnie's point, DeepSeek uses lower precision mathematics, which requires much less power and infrastructure on the inferencing side as well as on the training side. And that is pretty valuable. And that's a trend that we've been seeing with AI models. I mean, the fact that you can run a deep learning model on your phone now shows that the power budget is dropping rapidly on the inferencing side. Another aspect of DeepSeek that I think is really interesting is that they're actually exposing the entire chain of thought as the model is trying to work out the answers to problems. Now, that's been something that has been a pretty closely guarded secret for companies like OpenAI. Even the models that do expose more chain of thought, for example, you can make Llama from Meta expose some of that if you really work hard. DeepSeek is doing that by default, and so you can really watch it doing the thing, which I think helps both in terms of giving us confidence in its answers, but also in terms of helping the next model develop, because we can see how this thing is working to some extent. And I think aspects like this are important, as well as the sort of big geopolitical questions of how did they do it and what does it mean for us. Um, you know, the DeepSeek team has pointed out that we're all helping each other to develop better models, and they wouldn't have been able to do this if it hadn't been for the fact that much of the work of researchers up to this point has been exposed for the rest of the world to learn from. And so essentially, they're trying to share their innovations and say, look, we can do it with pure reinforcement learning. We don't have to have supervised training of the model, that sort of thing. I think that's very, very cool, and it helps push the state of the art forward in a way that science is supposed to work.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to all the investor lawsuits that will be coming down the pike if this turns out to be true, because the investors are going to be, hey, you guys either should have known about this, or maybe you did know about this and you hoodwinked us. So,
well, all those investors that are counting on OpenAI to develop artificial general intelligence this year.
Right. It's coming. It's coming. So's quantum. I don't know.
not according to the NVIDIA CEO, quantum's not coming to be relevant for at least a decade.
Hey, there's the guy who said you needed the biggest, baddest processors to do AI. I know Jensen's credibility is taking a hit here. Anyway, hey, we've devoted a lot of time to this, but well worth it. I'm sure this won't be the last time we discuss it, but we need to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We're going to come back to our next block as we talk about it's Data Privacy Day. What are you doing to celebrate? You're watching Techstrong, gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, folks, we're back. And yes, we are celebrating Data Privacy Day once again. I think we've been at this for almost, that feels like a decade. I'm not exactly sure how long. But in the age of AI, I think this is becoming a more pressing issue. Stephen, what's your assessment of the current state of data privacy? Because some of the younger generation would say there's no such thing.
Well, I think that that's a pretty cynical attitude, but I guess Gen Z can be forgiven for being cynical, considering that what they've been hearing all this time. Yeah, I am skeptical of declaring days. I don't know if you guys know it, but every week on the Gestalt IT Rundown on Wednesdays, we begin the show by pointing out some of the ludicrous days it is. It's National Spaghetti Day, National Girl Scout Cookie Day, whatever. So Data Privacy Day does get my hackles raised, as the old men say, a little bit, as does the fact that the whole point of Data Privacy Day is to raise awareness. Yes, awareness and $1.89 will buy you a bean burrito at Taco Bell. It's not all that useful to raise awareness of things that people are already annoyed about and cynical about and resigned to. But that being said, that's my grumpy old man shouting at the clouds. Let me put on my regular hat here and say, yes, there's a lot of things in Data Privacy Day that we do need to focus on. Now, first off, I think that it's important to recognize that we do or should have some control over our personally identifiable information. I think most of us have experienced the joy or frustration of going to, I don't know, some sort of appointment and the form says, put your social security number here. And if you're like me, you go to the person and say, are you going to tax me? Well, then why do you need my social security number? And half the time the answer is, oh, we don't need that. We just ask for it. Well, right there is the problem with data privacy. We don't need that. We just ask for it. The next aspect is that most of this personally identifiable information is not stored in a secure way, at least here in the US. Now, I know in Europe they have strong penalties for not storing it securely, but I question whether those penalties are actually having the impact that they could have, because I suspect that many of it's still not stored securely over there. And in other countries, well, who knows what the laws are and who knows what the practices are. I suspect that in many cases, this stuff is, PII is stored wide open. Sure seems to be because of all these massive data breaches. As my friend Troy Hunt and Have I Been Pwned exposed, there are data breaches all the time. And all of us get caught up with them. And there again, I mean, it's easy to become cynical when the answer to a data breach is, here's a free year of credit monitoring from a company that's going to try to sell you stuff. Awesome. That's really going to help me. So I love the idea. I love the spirit. I love the heart of Data Privacy Day. But the truth is, we do live in a cynical time. And I'm not surprised that people are cynical about data privacy.
I have a thought or two on this. So I'm really glad we have a data privacy day one day a year, but we should give a crap the other 364 days a year too. But that being said, when I think of data privacy, I don't think just of PII. I think from a corporate level, right? Data represents the crown jewels of so many of us for our organizations. And if we don't handle that data, someone's liable to steal it, use it to build an open source model and sink the whole ship. Right? It's happened. That being said, Stephen, I agree with you. Social security numbers were never meant to be unique identifiers for ID. It was really just so you have, it's like your account number in the bank of Social Security. And I wish we would get away from Social Security numbers as a unique identifier. I do take umbrage, though, in terms of the GDPR. I think whether you're based in Europe or not, you are subject to GDPR if you're doing business on the internet. That's the reality of it. Very few companies can get away with saying, oh, well, we're not in Europe, we don't participate. Bullcrap. You've got customers in Europe, you have customers of customers in Europe, you're subject to it. I think a lot of people do store PII in encrypted or secure locations. I just think the bad guys, the way most of these data breaches happen today is via a phishing attack. And so, Stephen, not to pick on you, but if I'm able to log into Tech Field Day encrypted data as Stephen Foskett because I was able to get your credentials, I have access to the whole thing. Very few attacks are sort of brute forced, and we read about them sometimes, right? You'll hear about a brute force attack, and I got salted, data that I could work on for the next 300 years to decrypt until Jensen tells us it's okay, and then quantum is real, and we'll use quantum to break it. But that's not the way most hacks take place. They take place with credentials that give them access to unencrypt the encrypted data that they're grabbing. Now, that being said, as I said right from the outset, I appreciate the gesture of calling attention to Data Privacy Day. I think it made more sense 10 or 15 years ago when we really had a problem getting people to focus in on security. Its time has probably passed.
I don't know.
Every day is Data Privacy Day.
I would argue the tenor of the conversation needs to change, and I think Stephen touched on it a little bit with the whole Social Security thing. But too many organizations think that the data that they collect is now their data, and they don't really think about it as they are the stewards of data that belongs to somebody else, and they're being trusted with something, and then they don't manage it well because then they give it to developers to code stuff, and then they give it to salespeople to shove it in a spreadsheet somewhere in an unprotected file, and they're just cavalier with the whole thing. I remember talking to one guy recently who's a developer in a bank, and they would know how much money Celtics players had in their account because they were just kind of using that data to help build their next generation of applications, and they had no business knowing it or no requirement for knowing it. I just think that the issue isn't so much the way we secure the data, it's just how we think about what the responsibility is.
I totally agree with you, Mike, and Stephen as well. Uh, I feel like that when data is getting collected from customers, it needs to be on a need per basis. Like if you need it, collect it. If you don't, then don't. Because we have all seen the downside of playing fast and loose with public data, public information, sensitive data, and things like that. And also sometimes companies rely on third party collectors who aren't always the most mindful about the security of that data. So yeah, I feel like that there needs to be some sort of oversight on what data is being collected and how it is being handled within the organization as it passes on from team to team.
And how it's being sold, right? From company to company. That's always such a big issue. That's why I hate giving my phone number to any store because you'll get so many spam calls after that from people you never heard of.
Let me give you a real world example, though, that happened to me this weekend. Well, not to me, to my wife, Bonnie. But if it happens to
happening
her, it
again.
happens to me too. When you're married, as long as we are, it happens. But anyway, we get a letter in the mail from from a company called the Garden of Life. I don't know if you guys are familiar. The Garden of Life are people who make like protein powder. My wife's much more healthier than I am, and so she does all of that. And it seems the Garden of Life was breached, and Bonnie's PII was stolen. Her name, our address, not her social security number, but her credit card number, and that she used to use there, her email and so forth. We've all gotten these letters, I'm sure. I usually get one a week or so from some organization or company we do business with. And like most of these letters, it says, good news, we're going to give you a free year of monitoring. Now, it used to be you would go to like Experian or Equifax and you'd sign up and or TransUnion, you get your free year of them giving you alerts. But no, now there's a cottage industry of companies who do this sort of thing for companies who are victims of breach. In this case, the company was called IDX. Bonnie, I said, well, Bonnie, you got to go fill it out and get your year of monitoring. She came back. She said, Alan, they're asking all these questions. I don't understand why they need this information. I said, what do you mean? Let me check it out. I log on. I scan the QR code, put everything in. It says, great, Bonnie, sorry about the breach of Garden of Life. They've hired us. We're here to help. And it then proceeds to ask her all of these questions about her financial accounts,
Oh my God.
bank accounts, and everything else under the guise of protecting her. I said, quite frankly, I said, fuck this. We're not doing this. We're already a victim of a breach. Why would I be giving you all this information? Do me a favor. If you see her information anywhere, her name or email address, you let me know. Until then, just,
Well, if I can-
SF up.
If I could suggest a couple of tools, a couple of specific tools for people, let me just do that. So first off, I mentioned Have I Been Pawned? That's a great site to see if your email address is included in any data dumps. I strongly recommend signing up. It's free, it's legit, it is respectable. Use it. The second thing is the only thing you should go to for a credit report is annualcreditreport.com. If you're in the US, outside the US, I don't know. But inside the US, there's a website called annualcreditreport.com, which is the actual US government one. And there's like 50 fake
Hasn't been shut
fraudulent
down yet?
salons nonsense. No, it hasn't been shut down yet. That sound like it, like freecreditreport.com, all that. They're all not scams, but businesses trying to take advantage of you. Annualcreditreport.com is the real one run by the US government. You can get your credit report, as it says, every year. You can actually get it every 4 months from each of the 3 credit agencies. So that's what I do, is every 4 months I download my credit report for free from the actual government one. The other thing is you can sign up for free in the US on TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. You can navigate your way through there and get a free account, and then you can freeze your credit. And you should all have your credit frozen at all times, because it is really the only way to protect yourself from fraud and scams. And even then, it may not work. My wife had her a payday lender lent somebody some money using her stolen information, even though her credit was frozen. And they keep coming back to her now saying, "Hey, you owe us this money," as they sell it to yet another bottom dweller. But the point is, those are basically some legit resources that you should use. I would never sign up for some random service that is randomly saying that it's going to protect me, if only I give it even more information. So back to the subject at hand, Data Privacy Day. Let's keep our data private. Let's not give it out as much as we possibly can.
And happy Data Privacy Day to you. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back. We're going to end up with the future of farming from our very own farm gal, Bonnie Schneider. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. We all love fresh fruits and vegetables, well, mainly vegetables in this case, but you might think you have to go to a farm way outside of a city to get them. But now there's a new way to do it. I guess it's not that new. It's actually been a while that it's been happening, but the technology for this service is improving. I'm talking about vertical farming, which is very popular in urban areas. And it's fascinating how much lettuce, for example, they can grow in such a small space. I decided to take a closer look at vertical farming and the tech behind it. Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Schneider with your Ecotech Analyst Insights. The future of farming is indoors and upward. Vertical farms powered by AI and robotics are stacking crops in LED-lit layers from floor to ceiling in urban warehouses. Smart sensors and AI algorithms continuously optimize temperature, humidity, and nutrient levels, while automated robots handle everything from seeding to harvesting. The result? A single facility can now produce the equivalent of 400 acres of conventional farming in just 1 acre of vertical space. 2 key growing technologies dominate this space: hydroponics, where plants grow in nutrient-rich water solutions, and aeroponics, where roots suspend in air, receiving nutrients through a fine mist. These soilless systems enable precise control over nutrient delivery while reducing water usage by up to 95%. Plus, they can enjoy perfect growing conditions regardless of the weather outside. Vertical farming does face challenges, including energy costs and crop limitations. Plus, the initial investment for vertical farms can be substantial. Where can you find vertical farms?
Cities like Singapore, Dubai, Shanghai, New York City, and Tokyo are currently leading the way in vertical farming. By producing fresh food year-round within city limits, vertical farming offers a new model of agriculture using less water, no pesticides, and minimal transportation. An appealing solution for expanding urban areas.
Now, you may not be aware, but more than half the world lives in cities globally, and that number is expected to increase in the decades to come. So, solutions like vertical farming that are leaning into tech and creating more sustainable food and sustainable agriculture are very exciting. In the way that they could hopefully supply more organic food, not using pesticides, and also reducing water use. Or these vertical farms that I just spoke about use 90% less water than large farms do. So I think it's a promising technology for sustainable agriculture. And I'd be curious to see what the panel thinks.
So I got to tell you, 3 times now I've almost bought this thing. I think it's called Garden with a Y in it, where it's like it looks like PVC pipe. Have you guys seen this? Looks like PVC pipes, and they have little outs things, and you could put in different plugs for different vegetables or flowers and have a mixed use thing. And in a little corner of your room, you can create this like beautiful thing that both feeds you, makes it smell nice, and is pretty to look at. Um, I don't doubt it, and it uses a little bit of hydroponics and stuff, and there's some, some tech to it as well and lighting, but, um, I just don't know at scale, right? Because so much today of our food is so processed and done at scale, right? Could this make a meaningful dent in big ag, right? And I'm all for it if it does, obviously.
Well, they're
So
doing this
love
here in Ohio, and we're excited about it here. I just want to throw that out there. I think it can be great for a lot of produce that we eat, especially things like microgreens and salads and so on. It seems to work very, very well for that. There's an organization or a company in Akron called Vigio that's gotten a lot of press for doing this in old industrial building in downtown Akron. There's another one out in Medina that makes that is a real large scale producer of vertically farmed salads, and we buy them all the time. They're tremendous. They don't need pesticides because there's no pests. It's a really positive move, and I think that it can make an impact. It's just not for all types of vegetables, and
Right.
I think that that's one of the challenges here is you can't grow some things vertically.
That's true.
Yeah. So, what is the level of scale that we can get to with this? Because ultimately, does this wind up being the digital equivalent of the neighborhood garden project, or is this kind of like something we can feed an entire city using?
I think it can be scaled within the cities. So when we're looking at local areas that need to grow food, it's possible. Now, there is the downside of the cost setup that they can be expensive because you're talking about having the IoT and temperature sensors, and that equipment can get pricey. So it's not something that can be scaled cheaply, but it can be scaled. And cities, as I mentioned in my report, like Singapore, for example, are leaning into this in an important way. And the conversation about food and big ag is definitely coming to the forefront. People are looking for less processed foods and having not just a locals farmers market, but even more local. In the cities, when you live like in New York, for example, you'll have in Union Square a farmers market where they're driving a couple hours around the city, and it's very exciting because you're getting that local produce. But imagine if you're getting your lettuce that's a half a block away. I mean, that's pretty exciting. So I think it is going to be scaled. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take some more cost. And then the argument will be, okay, does the cost worth it to have pesticide-free lettuce or basil or some of the
Well,
things they grow there?
is it a question that it's much more expensive to do it that way?
It can be with the setup, especially if we're talking about scaling it to the level of that with the technology. But more and more cities are doing this and having success with it.
I mean, I like the idea of, the family farming. You grow your own food, even if it's just for your family. It doesn't take a lot to just grow enough for your family,
Right.
right? And what a kind of game changer that would be.
I think the
I would-
AI
I would-
technology will also help it speed up and where we've seen it maybe 10 years ago versus now.
I would like to see the math on that because, all the people are saying that it's less expensive to go use some giant field somewhere and ship it. Are we really factoring in the total cost of that? Because, when I look at it, I'm like, the cost of moving all that stuff and the produce and the trucks and the impact it has on the climate is, not insignificant.
Well, I just heard about a startup using reinforced growing techniques.
Uh-huh.
That,
And
you
for-
know,
and-
that may
and-
revolutionize this.
And,
Maybe
and for all you people who are only watching the C block, go see the A block so you know what he's talking about.
exactly.
Well,
But
the
hey,
nice thing about farming on a field is that it has this magical source of light that comes from the sky for about half
Yeah,
the
that's true.
day. The trouble with vertical farming is that indoor farming requires artificial lighting, and artificial lighting can actually be a big power draw. And if you're using fossil fuels to generate the power for the artificial lighting, then maybe it's not so efficient. And the same thing is true of some of the other aspects of it,
But-
moving around big pallets of soil with plants and so on with a forklift. If you're using a fossil fuel powered forklift to do that, that's not as great as using maybe an electric one. There's all sorts of aspects to it that do make it less suitable. But if you look at things, so for example, I mentioned, if you go to buckeyefresh.com, for example, you can see the scale already of some of these vertical farming techniques. And you can buy this basically everywhere in the state. I think most other states have similar producers as well. And they are able to produce this stuff cost effectively and competitively with farms.
Hey, we've been doing this, artificial lights and plants growing since heck I was in college, man. We had all kinds of plants in the
remind me to
closet.
tell you that story one time. I got in a lot of trouble for that.
My house has artificial lights too. I just thought about that. I think yours might as well have electrically powered lights instead of using the sun.
Yeah, it's like one resource for another. You get the free sun, outside, but then you have to use all the water. So it depends on how you look.
Let me just say there's some crazy guy in Ohio I know always is on here talking about how alternative energy is getting cheaper and cheaper every day. So there you go. We need to wrap up, though, this edition of Techstrong Gang. It's been a DeepSeek kind of day. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be talking more about this stuff, I'm sure, in the days and weeks ahead. Sulagna, Stephen, Bonnie, Mike, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. As usual, we've got a full Techstrong TV lineup coming at you. Stephen mentioned earlier, we've got AI Tech Field Day. Is it Wednesday, Thursday, Stephen, or Tuesday, Wednesday? I'm confused.
It is Wednesday, Thursday. We'll be live streaming on Techstrong, including, of course, Techstrong AI. We'll have some familiar faces from the gang there, including, of course, John Swartz and Mish Ashley, but also John Willis is going to be out there. And we'll be recording, in addition to doing the Tech Field Day, the AI-focused Tech Field Day presentations, we're going to be doing the gang. We're going to be recording the gang live on site in San Jose. So watch on Thursday and Friday for the Techstrong Gang episodes recorded live with me.
Fantastic. All righty. Hey, that's a wrap. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of Techstrong TV. Stay tuned. This is a breaking news kind of situation. We'll be covering it as best we can. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. Have a great day, everyone. We're out.